Are we ever unknowingly encountering AI agents, do you think?
It might be possible. If you're ever unsure if you're speaking to a human or an agent, you can just ask it some challenging questions.
What is the future of voice? Where is this all going?
We think voice is going to be the primary interface for a lot of things.
What happens with our data when we speak to a voice agent? Think about the last time you called customer service. You probably waited on hold, listened to the same 4 bars of really painful jazz on loop. And when someone finally picked up, they sounded exhausted, angry, grumpy. Now imagine that call goes differently. It's picked up instantly. The voice on the other end is calm, warm, chilled, actually helpful. It solves your problem in 2 minutes flat. And then you find out it wasn't a person at all. And that's where we are now. Voice AI has quietly become one of the fastest moving corners of the whole industry. It's showing up in customer support, in audiobooks, in dubbing, in apps you use every single day. And most of us haven't really stopped to think about what that means. This is Trust Issues, where we break down AI tools, how they work, whether we should trust them, and how we can use them more mindfully. I'm Ailish McLaughlin, and today we're looking at ElevenLabs. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a voice AI expert. I've used the tools a bit and I've been genuinely impressed and a little bit unsettled. But I'm not the person who can tell you how the tech works under the hood. So today I want to do this the way I'd do it if I was trying to figure it out myself, starting with the story. Because the story of ElevenLabs is actually a brilliant one. It starts with 2 Polish guys, Peter and Maddie. Don't ask me to attempt the second names. They were high school friends who grew up together in Warsaw and then moved to the UK. Peter went to Cambridge and became a machine learning engineer at Google. Maddie went to Imperial College and ended up as a deployment strategist at Palantir. Very accomplished, very not bored. But here's the thing that got them going. In Poland, when American films get translated, they don't really dub them the way we're used to. There's no cast of actors doing different voices for different characters. It's one monotone man reading every single line, all in the same flat voice, laid over the top of the original English audio. It's called lecture. And if you grew up watching films that way, it's apparently deeply, deeply annoying. So Peter and Maddie got together in early 2021 and started a hack weekend project to see if they could fix it. By April 2022, they'd formally started the company. And they spent a full year in stealth, just building, while every other AI startup was rushing to launch a ChatGPT wrapper. I find this such a cool story because so often the best tech companies don't start with some grand market opportunity. They start with someone who's deeply, personally annoyed by a problem that nobody else seems to want to solve, and they take the matters into their own hands. There's also a timing element here that I think is worth pointing out. They launched their beta publicly in January 2023, which was, if you remember, about 6 weeks after ChatGPT had dropped and the whole world had suddenly cared about generative AI. So these two were already sitting there with a fully built product in a space nobody else was paying attention to. Right place, right time, and with a very specific frustration driving them forward. Fast forward to today, and ElevenLabs is one of the most talked about AI companies in the world. In February this year, they raised $500 million at an $11 billion valuation. Their voice tools are being used inside 60% of Fortune 500 companies. And they've just expanded into voice agents, which is the thing we're going to dig into with today's guest. But the reaction online is where it gets really interesting. On the one hand, people are genuinely blown away. If you look at Reddit threads, Trustpilot reviews, YouTube creator communities, the sentiment is pretty consistent. Users consistently praise how natural the voice sounds. And reviewers are repeatedly surprised by how the system can reproduce a voice from minimal audio samples. On the other hand, people are genuinely uneasy, and the concerns are coming from 2 places. The first is voice actors, particularly dubbing professionals in countries like Brazil and India, whose entire livelihoods are being automated. The president of the Brazilian Association of Dubbing Professionals told Rest of World recently, "With new AI-generated voices, I'll be out of a job even though I am the one providing the input." He also made this really important point about culture, that human dubbing adapts foreign content to local idiosyncrasies, and with AI, that nuance gets lost. The second concern is scams and deepfakes. The most famous example is from January 2024, right before the New Hampshire Democratic primary in the US. Thousands of voters got a robocall that sounded exactly like Joe Biden, telling them not to vote. 2 separate forensic analyses concluded that the audio had been made using ElevenLabs. The company banned the user and said it was dedicated to preventing the misuse of audio AI tools. But the incident has become a reference point for anyone worried about what this technology can do in the wrong hands. So that's the tension I want to dig into today. With extraordinary tools come extraordinary consequences. And when the tool in question is your voice, one of the most personal things you have, those consequences can feel especially close to home. This episode is brought to you by UnlikelyAI. They make what seems impossible to achieve in AI possible. Explainable, accurate, consistent AI for regulated industries. If you're in banking, accounting, insurance, or anywhere compliance matters, that's a bigger deal than it sounds. Most AI can't deliver that. Check them out at unlikely.ai. Today's guest is Louise Meyer-Schönherr. She joined ElevenLabs 2 years ago, and now she's on the forward deployed engineering team building voice agents for some of the biggest enterprises in the world. Which means she's the perfect person to walk us through what's actually happening under the hood. Louise, hi, you're very welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, super excited about our talk today.
Awesome. So tell me a bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, where you're at.
Very happy to start with that. So I'm from Germany. I started off kind of my business career more on the business side, really. Went to business school, did strategy consulting for 2 years, worked for BCG. In very traditional industries, actually. So working, for example, in building materials or construction. But soon also developed this edge where I was saying, I'm actually have a very big interest in kind of the tech world and entrepreneurship, and wanted to be much closer to that, and kind of had then this next big itch growing in me to join a startup. And back then started to reach out a little bit to the founders, like, hey, what are you up to?
Nice.
Like, do you have another spot in your company? After which then I found ElevenLabs.
Great. And that's where you are now.
This is where I am now. I've joined the company when they were around 2 years old, when there were around 30 people. So very different today where they are today.
Okay, so for someone who hasn't heard of ElevenLabs, what do you guys actually do?
That's a good question. So ElevenLabs at its core is a research company. This means that we do have a team of research engineers that are actually training models. And different to kind of the OpenAIs and Anthropics who are building text-based models, we are building audio models, which means that we can convert written text into speech. And you can maybe say, okay, that's not new, Louise, like there's been this before, we know Alexa, etc. So what really made a difference for ElevenLabs back then in 2023 is that the speech they created is contextually aware, it has intonation, it sounds human-like. So there was kind of really this breakthrough in quality that set our text-to-speech models, that's how we call them, apart from what was in the market. So this is what we started off with, kind of the model. We went a long way from there. On the research side, we develop models that are made for different purposes. So models that are, for example, really well performing in text-to-speech and low latency environments, like, for example, real-time conversation. But we also tapped into the modality of, for example, transcription, speech to text, so to go the other way, which is also very relevant in especially a conversational setup. And expanded that also with sound effects and music. So we have all these kind of foundational models in the audio sphere at this moment. So very well set up horizontally. And the second element then to ElevenLabs is like how you make these models accessible to the broader public.
Which part of it then, if you think specifically about what you have, what part of that is AI? Is it AI? Like, how do you guys kind of think about the technology you have and how it underpins all of your products?
Definitely. Like, this is really at our core, kind of the models that are able to produce that audio experience across the different modalities. Like, this is very core AI. It's like taking an input. It's been trained to do that and to reproduce it at scale, and to do that in a reliable way. Obviously, there's a lot more to this than just training a model. But yeah, that's really the core.
I'm curious to kind of understand some of the success stories here, because I think there is a bit of, there's a lot of people who are very nervous about AI generally and the kind of tech industry. And they sort of assume that it's just like they're hearing just negative news stories or
Yes.
that kind of thing. I'd love to know, like, what are some of the best success stories with with voice generally, whether it's, some of the stuff you've worked on or just kind of more generally in the space?
Yeah, I think in general, kind of the leading principle where I see voice being successful is that it's just a very natural interface for us. It's much more natural than actually typing something in your phone. And you will see that with children, then it's the first thing you learn, obviously, is to communicate. So I think it's a positive thing for kind of the interface to be closer to what is actually comes more natural to us as kind of a leading principle. But then also we see kind of one of our first customers was actually chess.com. It's an online, you can play chess online. And what they did is like, we want to use the power of voice AI to actually create a coach for chess,
cool.
Voiced by kind of some of the leading players. So actually take this concept of making a one-to-one coaching situation for their players and allowing kind of an educational angle to take place. One really exciting thing that also our company does do is, because we do have kind of the generative AI to produce speech, which taps into also a large library of different voices. So you can select over 11,000 voices to actually make it your very own experience. We also are working with individuals that have lost their voice due to illness, to actually reconstruct it based on past recordings and things like that, and give them kind of the ability back to speak in their own voice and to not sound robotic, but to sound like they used to sound, which is really exciting. Yeah. And our company is on a mission to give 1 million people their voice back. If there are more out there, we would also do more. But this is maybe like something that's a bit overlooked, of like what positive impact we can have on people's life. And when you listen to their stories, we do have a documentary coming out of this. It's really incredible what it means to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know about that. And I think that's, so important. I can imagine, if you were in that circumstance, that would be so frustrating, because I think the thing with voice is it's such a unique part of oneself.
Yes.
And, it's something we really use to identify and relate to others. And it's like one of the key things you kind of, I recognize your voice, or like I've met you before, those kind of things. And so, being able to kind of bring the human element to a AI version of voice is really important. I suppose like the interesting flip side of that is, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is, if I kind of rely on voice and accents and whatever else to identify that I'm speaking,
yes, or
who I'm speaking to, or that I'm speaking to a person, if that's now like so well replicated by technology, do I then feel like I can't trust who I'm talking to or anything like that? I'm curious what you think about that side of it as well.
Yeah, for that side, I mostly think it is good to be aware of the state where the technology is, like appreciating that really the voices are very strong. We do a lot of things to help with that, in the way that we, for example, would watermark our audio, so you would be able to detect a certain, if it comes from us, if it's AI generated, things like that. If you are, it really kind of depends on where you interact with. For example, if you're talking to your trusted bank, your trusted telephony provider, things like that, those companies have your interest in mind. They will do everything to protect your data, to protect your privacy, to build in a responsible way. These are the companies I interact with on a daily basis. They're very concerned in making this a very safe experience. They will also tell you that it's AI. It's part of how often the agents are designed, saying, I'm the virtual assistant, I'm powered by AI. They will tell you. If you, for example, now get a call from a random number that you don't, I think this is kind of like the common sense to then not probably engage, and there will be elements of that. Yeah. But at least we as a company, we are very, very top of mind and making this the safest experience, and so are our customers. And we put a lot of emphasis on that. So my kind of recommendation is stay informed, stay alert, be aware where kind of the level of technology is, and then you'll be able to evaluate kind of where to trust, where to step away.
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense, and I think you're right. Like, you know, being told what you're engaging with is really important. And it made me think when I was kind of doing some research. I read about I think ElevenLabs was used to mimic Joe Biden's voice and calling all these people, and it was like a whole thing. And I think the point is, you know, it's difficult when you give this technology and put it in the hands of people. And we've seen this with like deepfake technology. And this is one of the challenges with, AI kind of being accessible to everyone. I think people get a lot of power and they can realize maybe some of the stuff that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to.
Yes.
And we're sort of seeing that rolled out. Like, what kind of I guess things do you guys have in place that sort of help manage or control and add safety to the tech?
Yeah, so we do have no-go voices. So these are voices, for example, of politicians, etc., which are blocked entirely. Also, our process of cloning voices, maybe also to explain this, you have the possibility with ElevenLabs to create instant voice clones or professional voice clones, usually, for example, from a certain voice actor that you want to collaborate with, that you want to digitize for whatever application. So also within this process, we have multiple verification steps to really make sure that this voice is you, that you have the rights to clone this voice and to work with that. In parallel, then also checking against all the no-go voices. If there's kind of any sort of match, we would not be our moderation team would not clear this voice for usage, or start engaging with you to understand if it's by chance, for example. And we do have a big safety team that is very active around this. So we have moderators that check activity, that will make sure kind of there are no bad actors on the platform, but still want to make this technology available for kind of the other amazing things that you can do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's not about getting rid of anything that can cause harm, because this is the nature of evolving technology, and you can't foresee every kind of use or misuse, but it's about kind of, as you said, just like really trying to react and or be proactive and think about how you can minimize and sort of mitigate that. And I think all the things that you've mentioned there are really important. I suppose one thing you talked about, and I was thinking about last night, is as you said, sort of like voice actors, right? There's people whose job it is to kind of be a voice actor, use their voice.
Yeah.
And as you said, so you've got the permissions in place. It's not like I'm stealing your voice or someone else's voice and kind of just doing that without consent. But do you do you think I can imagine if I was a voice actor, I might actually feel a bit under threat by this technology. And I think this is the same generally. Lots of creatives are under threat, are feeling under threat from different technology. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a problem?
So how I see it is that ElevenLabs gives a voice actor another tool in their repertoire, essentially. So we, for example, have over 11,000 voice actors on our platform, and every time their voice is used, we pay out money for their usage. And we've paid out over 11 million already to our voice partners. And I think there's kind of one element where the application is a bit changing on where really the volume sits, which is that, for example, with agents, voice agents being active in customer support, they do 1,000 calls a day, which is practically impossible for a voice actor, and probably also kind of a very different field of business. Yeah. So all of a sudden, you can not only be kind of do the creative arts of maybe like audiobooks or movies, things like that, but you can be active in like 100 other different places at the same time. So it's like also really a lot of leverage you can get out of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's always the person's choice where they want to be active. So I see ElevenLabs as one tool they can use, but don't have to, essentially.
I hear what you're saying. And I think one of the things that I guess gets forgotten in some of the conversations is that tech is an enabler. You know, it's not always a competitor. And I think that's kind of what you're saying there is like, actually, if voice is your tool in your job, it's like actually you now have a tool that you can use to amplify that and your reach and kind of what you can do. So yeah, I think that's a really important way to look at it. I want to dig into, as I said, where we're kind of encountering voice that maybe we are or aren't aware of. But before I do that, what would you say that people should use ElevenLabs for? Like, what are we sleeping on? You know, is there like a really good kind of use that everyone should be playing around with?
There's so much opportunity. You can start from kind of looking at the call volumes that you already have, which is often kind of the support, internal things, outbound calling to your customers, things like that. But you can also think of entirely new things that you can build with the technology that could be maybe your next product, your next revenue driver. So happy to dive into kind of what concrete examples they are with that. But you can just, when you start thinking about voice, say, like, what conversations do I actually have on a daily basis? And does it make sense to use conversational AI voice agents to help make this more efficient? And then after that, you can say, what can I actually do in addition? Like, do I want to build something educational, like internal training? Do I actually want to automate some of my hiring as like kind of a first Q&A? Do I want to build customer support? Do I want to build something entirely new? So lots of things that one horizontal platform can help with.
Awesome. And I'd like to dig into that because I think, you know, I think that's a good point. Lots of people run kind of small businesses, maybe them and, you know, a few others or just them. And, you know, like, how can you leverage that? But before we do that, like...
Maybe a quick addition to
please.
This, because that's always like very much the business side of things. But on the creative side, we see actually authors creating audiobooks, first-time authors that are kind of scared to put down a large investment to get it produced as an audiobook, but kind of want to get kind of this first feel if they're readers that are interested in the audio format, using the technology to do that, creating multi-character audio experiences, and probably like where you would also hear our technology a lot is on YouTube, like a lot of creative that use it for voiceovers, or that even use our technology to dub their content into different languages. A good example of that is, for example, the creator Trubinsky, who I think dubs into 7 different languages and has grown his subscriber base, I think, by 1 to 2 million because of that.
Wow.
Kind of extending his reach so much. But also we've been working with kind of Lex Friedman, who was interviewing Javier Milei, president of Argentina, or Zelensky. And we were able to help work with him very closely to dub this content into English, and in the voice and intonation of the original speaker. So actually, like in this very sensitive kind of political environment, you're not dependent on a voiceover, but you can really experience how it was said, what the original intention was. So it's like, it's a broad range of applications that you can follow.
One thing you mentioned was kind of creators. And so whether it's like someone who's written their first novel or, you know, book and on YouTube. And it made me also think a bit, a lot of people are getting into, I mean, I guess just content creation, right? And now it doesn't have to be, I think about Substack, for example.
Yeah.
One of my kind of favorite, because I prefer slightly longer form content, where I can get into the meat a bit more. And I think, you know, I'm like, oh, maybe I want to put some stuff on Substack. But one of my favorite things on there is the fact that I can actually listen sometimes. So I'm like getting ready in the morning, can't really like read, but I can listen to this kind of 7-minute article or whatever. And I think that seems like it could be a really great use of ElevenLabs, because, you know, you would think that like only sort of the top creators are sort of have access to those kind of tools, but actually anyone can turn text to speech, or as you said, like do voiceovers or sort of dubbing on their content.
And I think this is really where kind of also the customer or like the general user experience is changing. You just don't want to compromise. You want to switch in and out, kind of reading, listening, all of that. And you also want to potentially influence like how your listening experience is. We actually do have also an application, which is called our Reader app, where we have a direct publishing channel for authors to actually send their books. And then on the app, you will be able to listen to it and you are able to choose your favorite voice, which is kind of another hypothesis we're taking. Like, what if from an audiobook, there would be actually kind of many more versions where like in the morning you might want to listen to something more calming and maybe during the day you want to have an active voice, things like that. So what if we gave kind of the consumer the choice of what the audio experience would be like. And we also have some iconic voices on there, so you can, for example, listen to Judy Garland or something narrating your morning article. So this is kind of also our way of kind of giving authors, self-published authors, but also working with publishers, a new way of distributing and kind of flipping the script a bit of how content is consumed, and also learning from that, obviously.
I love that. I think of two things. One is I have gotten rid of a couple of audiobooks because I'm like, I cannot stand this person's voice, and that's mean, but sometimes things just they kind of grate on you. And the other is for a long time, every night going to bed, I would listen to Barack Obama narrating his own voice on 1.7x for some reason. That was like the perfect frequency to get me to sleep.
Well, if we can get him on our app, that would be the absolute dream. So if you have a direct contact, let me know. I will
look into it. There are some voices out there that are just like, amazing. I think you talked there about like we are already encountering AI voices, probably by ElevenLabs, in things like YouTube when it's being dubbed, or like reading your favorite Substack articles. Like, where else do you think, or where else are we kind of like coming across voice in our day-to-day lives that we maybe might not expect?
Yeah, so definitely around content, as you mentioned. Which might be in the dubbing sphere, but on Spotify you will see entirely ElevenLabs created podcasts as well. You might actually encounter ElevenLabs also when using one of the meta services where we also dub content into different languages, or when you're playing, for example, a game, which can be where kind of our voice technology would power an actual conversation with a NPC, non-player character, like we did, for example, with Darth Vader in Fortnite, where the players could actually interact with him live. It was a lot of fun to witness what people said. But other than kind of that area, where you will encounter our technology is more and more also growing in the customer support space. For example, if you are a Revolut customer, there is one of our voice agents embedded into your app that can answer all types of questions about your account, about any transactions. So this would, for example, be a quick way to experience that. Also, for example, Klarna in the US is using our technology. We are working also with companies like Deutsche Telekom to create whole new experiences. So kind of in the support space, you will likely see more and more of this. And hopefully it's like this change of the very hairy chatbot and the very hairy IVR system you navigate, and kind of you just calling saying, what's my problem? And then either the AI agent will help you directly, and hopefully in a good way because it actually understands what you say, or will forward you to a human after kind of doing this initial classification. So these experiences will change. And like as you call your support hotline, I think you will also notice, especially in the next 3 to 6 months, how the experience will change and how it will get from kind of a static transition of intent to like working with you, asking questions, and feel much more natural.
Yeah, awesome. I think when you were talking there, you mentioned in the beginning how you know, with these kind of agent, so say the voice agents that are powering like customer service for Revolut or wherever, you kind of combine with an LLM, and that made me think what you need to do there is understand what I'm like. I think what the LLM does there is understand what I'm asking, and then you power the interaction via voice. Is that a fair way of describing how that works?
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to take a step back to kind of like
please.
have a look at kind of what actually makes a voice agent and demystifying this a little bit. At the moment, how we think about agents and is actually the combination of different core components, which is in its simplest form the transcription, so converting speech into text, which is the LLM that is able to work with text to then create a relevant answer based on the context it has itself and based on the context you're giving it, which is an important element. Then once kind of we do have an answer, we use our text-to-speech model to actually transfer it back into speech. So you say something, the LLM will process, and then we say something back. That's very simplest form. Actually, the conversation orchestration is another big thing that we solve for our customers. We touched on it earlier, but it's a lot about like, when are you actually speaking? Are you trying to interrupt the agent? And kind of handling this naturally is very hard. It's probably one of the biggest engineering challenges. And then another thing is kind of really the context the agent has. If you just connect the LLM that you interact with, kind of maybe as a consumer, or like asking a question, things like that, it might not be able to answer specific queries about your company or your transactions maybe. So we have to give the agent additional knowledge and also additional instructions on how to behave. And we do that by using a system prompt that gives kind of the agent a framework. You are this and this. Your responsibility is to do that. Your tone of voice is that. And do never talk about these topics or politely decline to comment. So we also set guardrails in what the agent can or cannot do in these conversations. We can attach a knowledge base. So I can give it, for example, the FAQs from my website, making them very accessible then. And then I can also start personalizing my experience with selecting a voice that's very on brand, that's maybe in a support situation a bit more comforting, empathetic, than in a sales situation would be maybe a bit more upbeat. So these components you're able kind of to put together, and then that becomes kind of the voice agent in itself. And you are then this voice agent is able to answer things based on the context it's give you, but you can also add tools to the voice agent, which means kind of a tool would allow the voice agent to get data from a data bank, for example, about recent transactions that you want to talk about, or it could help. It could be a tool that can schedule something in your calendar, and the LLM can decide when to invoke it. That makes it agentic. You give it the context, you give it different tools, you give it different things, but in the end, it decides what to do, and we can influence the freedom of choice a bit and saying like, do this, this, and this in the sequence, and it will do that. Or you can give it like very free realm, saying like whatever you need to answer the question.
Awesome. I think that's really helpful to understand the full kind of environment or landscape that it operates within. And I think it's interesting because you sort of think like, oh, well, I'm just talking to to AI voice and that's it. But actually there are so many different components that need to go in there to make it, as you said, safe. So guardrailing it, but also have the right understanding and context. It's the same, like, I guess, when you interact with a Claude or whatever, is like in theory it's simple, but actually all of the things that go into it make it to ensure you get like a good kind of output, make it really kind of complex under the hood, so that you're getting a good experience. Do you think
just to add to that as well, is There are definitely also different architectures in the market where, for example, with speech-to-speech models, where all of this is kind of done within one instance. But we explicitly, at this point of time and what we know and what the experience is, we split it out so that each component can have kind of its best ability and make these components work together in very low latency ways. So that's kind of what makes it possible to actually deploy them. And as you said, you're not interacting only with a voice. You're also mostly not interacting only with one agent, but they are working together. Like in real enterprise deployments and customer support, we will build a lot of different agents that are very specialized in their task. They're very good in their task, that only have the right data access they need. And then they would hand off to each other to essentially be able to cover a really wide range of fields.
So you said that ElevenLabs will always kind of watermark or kind of flag that that you're interacting with AI. Like, are we ever unknowingly encountering AI agents, do you think?
It might be possible. If you are unknowingly encountering them, it is essentially, it would already probably come from an odd source.
Sure.
So if a number is calling, you've never seen it before, it might be outside of UK, whatever. I think that's mostly kind of these type of encounters. But generally, it's not something that companies hide. Like for a lot of companies, kind of offering a voice agent for support is something that new that they're proud of, that they kind of show very openly, speak very openly about, that they disclose and things like that. So I can't exclude it, of course, but the companies we work with that take these concerns very seriously will never design an experience where you'll be fooled and you're not sure if it's a human or an agent.
Yeah, and I think that's just really important to kind of outline. There's always going to be bad actors, right? And people kind of trying to take advantage of these things. But like you said, I think most companies who are employing this are, want to be really clear about it, because actually there's nothing to hide there. It's just, using technology and the goal presumably is to provide the best experience for their customers.
And companies are giving their customers a choice. Like you can wait in kind of the line to speak to a human agent, of course, or if it's just something very quick, we do have this AI alternative. It's really a design question. If you're ever unsure if you're speaking to a human or an agent, you can just ask it some challenging questions. Also, for example, some recent events that maybe the AI agent doesn't know about because it doesn't have that context, or isn't able to make certain things. Ask it a complex math question, things like that. And this is how really safety works for the industry. It will never be kind of one point solution. It's multiple things that have to work together. And obviously the big brands, customer trust is very, very important to them. So nothing would leave or go into production. This is where we call that it's actually customer facing, after being thoroughly tested, after doing, we call it, for example, red teaming tests. So we try to break it, and we don't try only once, but constantly. So that there's a lot of responsibility in the building. In the wild, I would say, be informed that it's there, that there's going to be bad actors. But yeah, I don't know, if you're unsure, hang up, ask a question, just don't engage.
Yeah. Hang up or call them back. But I love that idea of think of something that's either happening, ask about the strikes, or something that's happening at the moment, or a hard math problem, and watch how it responds. That's a great tip, I think.
Or ask to speak to their manager.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, and I think helpful. I think if you're feeling a little bit unsure when you're kind of interacting with these things.
Actually, we do have companies that are actually working with our technology to simulate this type of phishing attempts. So they help actually train the workforce or kind of the general public to be aware. So it's actually kind of a new level of cybersecurity, how you would be trained to not react to certain emails, how to tell that something is not right. The same is happening already also with voice interactions.
Yeah, awesome. And I think this is something that needs to be spread more widely. So tell your parents and your grandparents, because they're, I guess, maybe the ones that are slightly more vulnerable to these things, maybe being a bit out of the loop around tech. I guess one of the other things that people might feel, myself included, a little bit anxious about when it comes to any AI really, but maybe particularly voice, is like, what happens with our data when we speak to a voice agent? If I'm telling you about, I don't know, my transactions or a problem that's gone wrong in my flat or whatever, and I'm having to give you my address or anything like that, what's happening? Do I need to be worried? How is that being managed?
So our customers hold us to the highest standards there. So we, on the compliance side, we are SOC 2 compliant, we're GDPR compliant. We offer different data hosting environments. So that can be, for example, separated in EU hosting, US hosting. But we also offer our customers to have a zero retention mode. This is essentially whenever kind of the data is shared, we process it and then discard it. So it will not be saved. And also with our kind of third parties, when we're working with the LLM, we do have very rigid contracts with them that there is no data training happening with that. So we design kind of a system that supports and also our regulated customers. We go through regular reviews with that. So again, if you're interacting with a trusted source, you can be sure that this is handled very professionally. Or if they do want to store data of that conversations, they will get your consent. So it is kind of very similar to what you're used to saying, can we record the call for training purposes? If you consent, then you also consent that this data is being processed. We also are investing in PII redaction, which is essentially redacting personally identifiable data, like, for example, address, name, before it enters the LLM, to add an additional layer of anonymization. So there are different things and tools that the companies can tap into to then not have kind of any data stored of their customers.
Yeah, I think that's an important kind of point to note. Obviously, this is being thought about, but I think it's just like, as soon as you enter a new realm of like tech advancement or whatever, it's like, oh, like what does that mean? But obviously it is something that needs to be thought of. I guess like the other side of that is, you mentioned that if I use ElevenLabs as a consumer, right? So I want to, record my own voice or whatever, or a voice actor is like, you have to go through steps to get consent and ensure that this is like, I'm giving the rights and whatever else. But like, is there any risk that we would lose those rights via conversation somehow? Or, if I'm speaking to an agent or anything like that, is there any risk with that?
Not really. It is, you're right, like it's kind of, I'm unsure what the correct legal term is, but your voice is protected, the data is protected. So kind of if someone were to, for example, take your podcast and create a voice clone of you, that would be unlawful and you have the right to prosecute that essentially.
Okay, I think that's helpful to know point blank that you're good. I want to change tact a little bit. So obviously you work at ElevenLabs, you're in the AI space, you're, right in the thick of things. Like, I want to know a bit about like, what's your AI use like? How do you engage with it? What is your thought process?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I work in the forward deployed engineering team within ElevenLabs. So what we do is actually kind of the scoping and implementation work of our technology. So naturally, I engage with my platform or my core product, agents product, a lot. And in my personal use, I, for example, sometimes do it kind of to get prepared, like, for example, upload like some of the questions you might ask and just interact with it, get prepared for the specific situation I'm preparing for. Or, for example, we have a lot of inbound from also interested candidates to join our team. I don't have the time to do 15-minute calls a lot, so I'm just like, okay, what can I put as knowledge and input in a voice agent and make that available? So one, I use this technology a lot. I also use it for fun things, to create like speeches or like songs about my friends. In the realms of productivity, I have been using my keyboard less and less and less. I'm transcribing almost everything I do. So I transcribe into Slack. I transcribe into my kind of LLM terminal. I use Claude a lot. So anything that's kind of repetitive, I would have down as a skill, so something that's reusable. For Claude, it's similar to a tool, right? You call it, there's instructions in that, and you execute it, which, for example, is for creating, for example, LinkedIn content. I have a very specific tone of voice and helps me kind of structure a very long article that I want to summarize, but also on building kind of agents, for example, for demos. I kind of standardized and automated this. So in the Claude environment, using skills, using co-work, our Claude is connected to everything, which is amazing. It's connected to emails, to Slack, and just helps me to create content, PowerPoint presentation, docs, everything. Email automation, I'm big at. I'm usually transcribe into my email tool, then have it kind of formatted up and then send it out. And then I also use coding tools, like, for example, Cursor or Claude Code for kind of own fun projects, or just simply to understand other people's code, because I'm not a trained engineer, so I always use it to say, okay, explain me what this means, please. And it does a really great job onto that. I've also tested the realms of kind of Lovable, etc. I've built my own application of voice agents that can help you with astrology needs, so interpret your natal charts, things like that. Launched the product.
Stuff.
Nobody wanted it. Sad.
Weird.
Yeah. I might give it I noticed that running a business is really hard, especially if you don't have time. So sunsetted that. But kind of just tested all of these different things and kind of using everything kind of around code to build actual products and applications, but then mostly being a bit faster myself and kind of automating whatever is repeatable.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, relevant for this conversation, but I think the bit around transcribing and kind of relying more, on our voice. I remember my mum paid me money for every word per minute faster I got on a typing exercise when I was a kid. I was I need some money. I'm gonna, so we all got good at typing, but now we're at a point where actually typing's still slow, right? It does slow us down. So being able to transcribe things is a bit of a game changer. But I will say that I personally find that typing is the right pace for me for while I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll go and I'm I'm just going to transcribe this. And then I'm and I'm kind of repeating myself and it's not great. So I think maybe I need to get a bit better at articulating myself or thinking before I talk, maybe.
I think what you're saying makes complete sense, because the kind of what I dislike about all those AI tools is also how much they create. They create so if interacting with, for example, Claude, and it's very wordy, and you need to control it to be focused. And it's a little bit I didn't have time to write a short letter. This is where I sometimes I try to automate kind of 10 different tasks in parallel. I get very good impulse, but in the end I have so much content. I'm this is actually not advancing me.
Yeah.
So I kind of sometimes dismiss it all and just write in 10 bullets exactly what I was meant to say. And then actually I notice how much time I've wasted into trying to explain to the LLM on how to say it. And I think that's kind of probably a general thing. AI tools are great, but you shouldn't shift too much of your skill to them. It's maintain the integrity of your skills. Don't create too much noise. Also on the other person, respect their time. Don't send them crazy big essays. So I think that's probably something especially also my day-to-day works, use it, but don't kind of overflood everything with content, because then you're just being less productive in the end.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, actually, because I think I mean, I feel like we're all under pressure to just use AI for everything.
Yeah.
And I know I've had the experience of I'm doing 5 different things with different AI tools all at the same time. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing because I'm like approving this and checking this. And like I'm context switching like in this insane level. And probably not doing a particularly good job of anything. And I think the other thing, like one that I get really kind of wound up about is this idea of like, I've just received a 4-page document that I know has been written by AI.
With the long,
and I'm not confident that person has read
Yes.
it, but now I'm supposed to read it. Like
Yes,
I get a bit stressed about that. And I think it's the same. Like I've definitely transcribed a message into Slack and then it's been like this big long stream of consciousness. And I'm like, it's not really fair to ask someone actually to fully read that. So I think managing that is quite important.
And this is also what we do in our team, right? Like my role is like talking to stakeholders on the business, on the technical side, but my role is also to know this product in and out. And I can only do that by being hands-on on building, kind of failing, trying. And like, yes, we've automated some of kind of the initial agent setup. Like we can do this much faster now. But whenever somebody joins the company new, I was like, do not use it.
Yeah.
Like go into the platform, get your hands dirty, feel the pain, and like then you will memorize in each situation, and then you can actually help the customer in a much different way. You need to be close to the product and to your skills, and don't outsource that.
Yeah. And I mean, and then the flip side of that is like also I think you have to there has to be trial and error. Like you have to try things yourself and you have to realize what works and what doesn't work. And there's no shortcut to that. Like you can't AI yourself to that. I have a couple of things I want to cover to wrap up. So one is to go back a bit to what you were saying around whether you work in enterprise or whether you work, you have a small business or and anywhere in between, and thinking about using ElevenLabs or like a voice agent in the customer service side. Give me an example of like good uses of that. Because I think the enterprise setup is maybe a bit more clear cut, but say it's a small business, like when should I consider using agents and what for and when not to?
Yeah, for small businesses, we see actually the typical receptionist role being an active one. So, for example, if you're a doctor's office and you need to manage a lot of appointment changes, things like that, you can actually automate some of this, and you can also take it active, like during the night, for example. So imagine you come home from a long day, you forgot to call the doctor. So, but now you're able to do that, like at 11 p.m.
Yes.
So that could be helpful. For example, I think on the other side of the spectrum, we have one interesting company called Eldra, which is actually has automated a very specific interaction where they manage, for example, elderly care staff, and often they get a call from the person that is being taken care of, saying like, who's coming today, at what time. It's like they're not used to apps, right? They cannot be expected to kind of interact with a chatbot. So all of a sudden that interaction becomes really natural again, and kind of this routine task, or who's coming today, things like that. There's like an agent that just answers that and is there for them whenever they want to have that call. Also very interesting level of kind of like automating something. We're working with Deliveroo, who have to collect a lot of data from, example, their partner network. Like, when are you open actually? What are your opening times? You can imagine how big that partner network is, and like calling each one individually, it's quite the operational load. But now you can automate that and have like an outbound call, calling all of them at the same time, say like, are your opening times still correct? We did that actually also within our company to launch customer surveys. So we had kind of our agent doing feedback sessions with some of our customers, like, what do you want to change for ElevenLabs? Like, do you have any recommendations for us? So outside of this support vertical, which is interesting because there is just a lot of existing volume, there are a lot of other different application areas. In customer support specifically, I call it a little bit the customer support operating system that you have design choices around. So you can have a look and like, this is my current support offering. Maybe it's just chat, then great, let's give it a voice element, because I wasn't able to do that before because I'm a small startup and I just want to make the life of my customer a bit better. We've spoken with prospect that had to take their number off the website because they were so overwhelmed. So just like adding capacity in a very flexible manner, fast. But then also saying like, do I want to make my service better? Like customer support is most companies not in a great state. Can I reduce waiting times? Can I offer after-hour services, peak deflection? Can I also save my customer support agents from like very repetitive tasks? Because that's also frustrating. And it's actually interesting because we see in some of the deployments I'm working with, a lot of customer support agents are on the team automating this and giving their expertise on how to handle it and what should be part of the human conversations, what should be more part of kind of an automated conversation. So they are with us at the table, designing the solutions, hopefully making their lives better because they can actually focus on a little bit more value-adding conversations.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And I think that point around older people not being, like they're not going to look up an app or, check online or whatever, or, like that's just kind of out of the remit of being able to do the usual thing of make a phone call, but also not having to have someone answer those sort of monotonous kind of routine questions is such a good use case. And I think the bit around customer service employees kind of employing these tools is interesting because the one thing that I guess everyone keeps talking about with respect to AI and the evolution of it is like how it's going to, kill jobs. And so, like what does that mean for customer service employees, do you think?
I think kind of this notion that jobs are taken away is not entirely correct because in the end, what's happening is that the jobs are changing. For customer support specifically, there's like some of the highest attrition rates ever in this industry, meaning that the employees leave unwantedly by the company, which tells us a little bit like if this is kind of fulfilling for them, yes or no. That being said, because we have the support agents also working with us, sharing the expertise, the responsibility broadens that they have they're involved into the automation of the task in the processes, keeping that updating, making sure that the agents are performing in a high quality way. So in a sense, it would what we see in practice is actually that you have AI agents working alongside you to help your job become more meaningful. Like that's essentially what the operating model is going towards. So the responsibilities are changing. And actually like support agents are now managing a lot of AI agents and like making sure everything they say is correct and that they're set up in a proper way. So getting directly in touch with the technology and not being excluded from it. Or even like in live conversations, we have, for example, text agents helping them pull the correct data in real time, helping them to create a better experience and like moving away from like, let me look this up in the system. And often the system landscape is fragmented, so you have to change across like 10 screens. Like, how can we make that better as well? How can we give them also like feedback, like on the transcription element, like against what is best practice, against what is in your knowledge? What can you do better the next time? So the augmentation of the work itself, I think, will make meaningful impact on the quality of service and hopefully also the quality of the job itself.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I mean, there's so many instances, like say, for example, I work with accountancy firms, and a lot of what they do is very repetitive and kind of manual tasks. And yes, using AI for some of that means like people aren't going to need to do that task, but what they can do is like start to do much more like complex or kind of manage the things that need that human interaction. I think it's the same for customer service. Like if you're having to answer the phone 100 times a day and answer the same question, like that's hard.
Yeah.
But if you can be referred to when there's a more complex situation or something that needs human oversight or kind of needs a sort of specialized response, then that's like much more interesting work as well as being like, augmented and kind of like a different job.
And this is like one of the hypotheses I'm thinking about. And obviously it's still early days in the actual deployment, is what if actually the deployment of agent makes the job and the life of the support agents better. Because of the deflection, you could even think about if there's like a very difficult customer on the line, kind of being assaulting, whatever, to just say, okay, let the technology handle that, like protect your employees. There's like different, you can look at it in a different way. I think the discourse will go on, and I think it should. And in the end, it will be gradual design decisions, hopefully with everyone at the table to influence like what the future model should be.
Yeah, I love that. And that brings me on beautifully to my kind of final question. Like, what is the future of voice? Like, where's this all going? What do you see? Like, what's the near future? And then what are the big things that we might land on someday?
So we think that voice is going to be the primary interface for a lot of things. So all the interactions that you now have in writing, that you now have maybe with a chatbot, will become a voice interface. You'll be able to interact with it, but not only only that angle. Also, for example, if you're online shopping, like you might just want to like and have this like very specific like dress in mind that looks like this, and then like there's something, and we just like bring it up. So like kind of everything you do with your hands and like of typing, scrolling, think has the potential to move in the voice space. Also, for example, I'm already doing that in kind of like. My dream would be that I just like talk to my phone, like do this, do that, like, and it will execute and send that email and reply to this text. And I think we're not super far from that. In kind of connecting everything together and then having kind of one layer that you interact with. And I think that's kind of the strongest hypothesis where things will go. And also, I think the number of voice interactions then will naturally grow with that. And a lot of these things can kind of be net new, and that's probably something that we're also very excited about. At the moment, companies are often looking at efficiency, but they are going to be much stronger focus on kind of agentic opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. I think just being able to do so much more using just your voice is going to be amazing. I think the thing that really jumps out to me when I say that is like, we've constructed our work life around doing everything through text, really.
Yeah.
And now I think how is that going to impact how we engage in work? Because we can't all go and sit in an office and then just be talking to...
I do that.
Do you?
Yes. I always like tell my colleagues, I'm very sorry, but I'm just going to dictate, and I do like in a slightly more whispering way.
Yeah, I do this as well, actually. Some people are like looking up at me like, and I'm like, just keep talking.
Yeah.
But as in, if everyone's doing that, like, does the office structure then need to change a bit, perhaps? I mean, I think it's already changing a bit because we used to do all of our meetings in person, and now we're doing so many virtually, and so you can start to see office structures changing. We've got like phone booths in our office because we know people are going to be on calls, and much less time spent in meeting rooms altogether. I wonder how this might impact.
Good question.
Yeah,
I also don't know. I think we do have some help from our hardware providers that are very good at noise cancelling the microphone. So
very
if you like,
nice.
So that does help. But yeah, interesting thought. If everybody will pick up my little habit on dictation, maybe it will become like quite noisy.
But then if you think back to like, I think of Wolf of Wall Street or one of those, and you see those people just used to be on the phone constantly, right? So like, maybe we're just going back to that. Yeah,
maybe it's back to that.
Be the chaotic offices.
But mostly it's like, even kind of, it's more about kind of like the interconnection of what happens after that voice layer.
Okay.
And I think kind of where the future is also going is that, yes, we have kind of this agent running, for example, the support task, but what if kind of the agent that is helping my request where my parcel is, for example, from online order, what if that agent can also reach out to kind of the likes of UPS or whatever, saying like, hey, I have this request from my customer, can you help me? So like even like interconnection of the agents, as well as kind of there's like thinking about kind of this generative interface. So whenever you are calling, it might be very different, the experience, than what I'm calling, because I'm from Bavaria and I really like a strong Bavarian accent, and I just like feel very at home if the support agents talks to me this way. But then you have a very different experience. Like even with that, these conversations can become kind of part of your brand. It's kind of like, what do I want this to be like and sound like, and stuff like that. So a lot to think about of where all of this is heading. For me, it's always, I'm learning so much from our customers. They're doing so amazing things. It's so creative, and kind of just like looking at the use cases they're building, I'm learning every day. And we're here kind of to give them the infrastructure to do that at scale, do it in a safe way, and also to have like a very high quality with it.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that's the exciting thing, isn't it? As you build out this technology, you bring it to the world, and then you start to see how people apply it and where it goes, and you kind of, it's evolving kind of quicker than you could even think. Awesome. This has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
At the start of this episode, I talked to you about the moment where you realise the voice on the end of a customer service call might not be human at all, and how ElevenLabs has quietly become the company making a lot of that possible. And after this conversation, I still think that voice AI is remarkable. The tech is really extraordinary. The use cases are real, and some of them, like giving someone their voice back after illness, are genuinely moving. One thing that really stuck with me was Louise saying that typing is slowing us down. And when you sit with that for a second, it's actually a massive claim. We went from handwriting to typing, and now we're potentially moving to voice as the primary interface. That's not a tweak. That's a shift in how we interact with basically everything. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. I can type at the pace my brain thinks. When I talk, my mouth moves faster than my thoughts, and I fill the gaps with filler words and half sentences. So either voice catches up with how we already think, or we have to evolve how we communicate to match the tool. And I don't think we've really clocked that trade-off yet. But I also think voice AI is doing something more subtle than solving practical problems. It's not just helping businesses scale. It's starting to shape what we expect from a conversation. What counts as real connection? What counts as service? Who or what we're willing to talk to. The reflection I can't shake is this one. Voice has always been one of the ways we verify each other. You hear your mum's voice on the phone and you know it's her. You hear a colleague and you know their mood before they've said what's going on. It's one of those deep instinctive forms of trust we don't really think about until it's compromised. And now that voice can be replicated this well, that proxy doesn't quite hold anymore, which puts us in a strange spot where something we used to rely on without thinking has become something we have to actively question. So maybe the shift is this. Instead of asking, is this voice AI good or bad? We start asking, do I know I'm talking to an agent right now? Would I behave differently if I did? And what am I losing when that friction gets removed? If you're engaging with voice AI, here's something you can try this week. Next time you're on a call and you're not sure if the voice on the other end is human or AI, try Louise's tip. Ask it something that happened yesterday, or ask it a tricky maths questions. Those are things a voice agent usually can't handle in the moment. And notice how it makes you feel when you find out the answer either way. That gap between what you can tell and what you want to know is where your awareness is. And more generally, when you pick up any AI tool, don't just use it. Engage with it, question it, shape how you use it. Because the way these tools evolve isn't just down to the people building them. It's also down to us, the people using them. If you found this useful, follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And if there's an AI tool you want us to explore next, let me know. I'm Ailish, and this is Trust Issues. See you next time.